Hi everyone, this is Advanced Statistics for the Social Sciences. In this lecture, we'll continue discussing regression with interactions, and we'll look at an example of an interaction with a continuous moderator. So we'll continue with the example from the Payne study, and I mentioned at the beginning of this series of lectures that we had multiple variables in this data set. And one of the continuous variables we had that we haven't looked at yet is sleep quality. And so let's say in this study that researchers were interested in whether sleep quality would influence stress still the outcome, and whether that influence of sleep quality on stress would depend on values of pain severity. One reason we might look at this is that we might expect that good sleep quality would reduce stress, but that sleep quality might differ depending on one's level of pain, and that those with higher levels of pain might have worse sleep quality. In this new example, sleep is now the focal predictor variable, and pain, where it was a focal predictor variable in the last example, is now the continuous moderator variable. So we still need to center here, but now we're going to center both variables. And so the intercept and the focal variable slope, that's B1, the B1 coefficient, form the regression equation for individuals with a moderator score of 0. Now we don't have just groups coded 0, we actually have a range of continuous scores. So this is just for individuals who have a moderator score of 0. So it makes sense for us to center the moderator in addition to the focal predictor in a way that will make the intercept interpretable. So sleep quality is a 1 to 12 scale, and it's whole integers. So centering at the midpoint value of 6 would make sense. And we could center at the sample mean, but it has decimals. So we'll still have nice whole numbers if we center at the midpoint value. I believe in this example, the sleep quality sample mean is around 6.33, but let's just work with the midpoint value. It's another option we can use for centering. And pain severity, which is a continuous scale, is centered at the grand mean just as it was in the last example. So we'll be centering both. So let's take a look at the regression model. So now we're still working with stress as the outcome, and we've got this beta 1 coefficient that is the slope relating sleep to stress, sleep quality. Now the beta 2 coefficient is relating our moderator pain severity to stress. And then our beta 3 coefficient is again the interaction coefficient relating the interaction between sleep quality and pain severity to stress. And then in the second equation, as we've seen before, I rearranged these terms so that we can see that the influence of sleep quality on stress depends upon pain. It's included in this bracket term that relates sleep quality to stress. So this is the script we would use for this moderation analysis. And we've already centered pain in this example, so we don't need to center it again. We have the centered variable already, but we do now need to compute a centered variable for sleep quality. So I've shown that in this first line where I'm, again, using the midpoint of 6 to center. And then I need to compute an interaction term. And I'm computing the interaction term by multiplying the two continuous centered variables. So it's the interaction, int2, is equal to centered sleep multiplied by centered pain. And then we run the regression like usual, and just like we did with the categorical moderator, we enter in method equals enter, we enter in the focal predictor of sleep quality, and then the pain moderator, and then the interaction term between the two. So let's look at the coefficients output. The first thing we're going to do is look at the interaction term here. So the interaction term is negative 0.024. And I've shown you the formula for stress, plugging in all of these coefficients. The first thing that we want to do is determine whether the interaction is significant. And we see that the interaction is actually not significant here. So that would tell us that pain and sleep do not significantly interact to predict stress. So I'm going to show you essentially how to examine a significant interaction. We'll examine this interaction even though it's not significant. So if you have to run a continuous moderator regression model for your course project or something, that you can do it. So let's proceed through the steps even though we don't have a significant interaction in this example. And it's different. Examining the slopes, the simple slopes, is different for a continuous moderator because the slope of the sleep quality regression line varies across all different pain ratings, and pain severity is a continuous variable. So that would be a ton of different simple slopes we'd have to look at if we chose each value of pain severity. So what we do is we use what we call the pick a point approach. And to do this, we pick some low, medium, and high value of the continuous moderator. And typically, a good way to do this is to choose for a middle score, the mean, or in our case, the midpoint, which is 6. And then high and low scores are often defined as plus or minus 1 standard deviation from the mean. And we can get those from descriptives. So that's what we'll use for high and low scores. So then we're only examining 3 simple slopes at low, medium, and high values of the moderator. So this is the model testing approach overall. The first thing we do is test the interaction, and we just did that and we saw that the interaction was not significant. So typically we would move to just the main effects only model, like we did with regression with a categorical moderator, and we would just look at the influence of sleep quality and of pain severity on stress separately, excluding the interaction. But I'm going to show you how to look at the simple slopes, as I said, just in case you need to do it in the future, although typically we would not if the interaction is not significant. So we are going to compute simple slopes very similarly to how we did with a categorical moderator. And to do so, we are going to use these values of low, medium, and high pain. So for the first equation, I have plugged in now the B0, B1, B2, B3 coefficients into the equation, and we are going to sub in these values that we talked about. So instead of just using 0 and 1 values, we're going to use the low, medium, and high values that we specified for pain. So the first value is going to be 1 standard deviation below the mean. Now, remember that whether a variable is raw or centered, the standard deviation does not change. So the standard deviation of the raw pain variable is 1.85, and the standard deviation of the centered variable is 1.85. So it's easier for me to use medium pain as a score of 0 for the centered variable. And so for 1 standard deviation below the mean, 0 minus 1.85 is negative 1.85. So that's the value I'm using for low pain. And so you can see here that I've plugged that into the this burst equation. And then I've simplified the equation to an intercept and a slope for stress at low pain. So the intercept is 13.407. So this would be the predicted stress score for low pain value. And then we have the influence or the slope of sleep onto stress at a low pain value. And this slope is 0.455. Moving to the medium pain equation, I'm now plugging in a value of 0 because I'm thinking I'm using the centered pain variable. And so this equation does reduce, and I can see my slope and my intercept. My intercept is 14.313. It's a little bit higher. This would be the expected value of stress for medium pain and average sleep. And then I've got the slope, which is 0.499. And that is the slope relating sleep to the stress outcome at a medium level of pain. Now I've got the influence of sleep at high pain, and we can see here that the intercept is just a little bit higher again, and that the slope is just a little bit more negative, a little bit larger in the negative direction. It's 0.543. So this is the relation of sleep onto stress at a high level of pain. So now let's take a look at what these simple slopes look like on a plot. So this is what these simple slopes look like. So we can see that they're all negative, and we've got the low, the medium, and the high values, but they look relatively parallel. So essentially what we're seeing is that As sleep quality improves, stress decreases, and the amount of pain a person is in doesn't really affect that relation. And we can see this really nicely from this plot. The groups just don't differ. So our interpretation of this example would be that there is no interaction between sleep and pain. So we would say that increasing sleep quality ratings reduce stress for all levels of pain. There's no difference across levels of pain. This concludes the 4th lecture on moderation. And in the next lecture series, we will discuss one-way analysis of variance.